Welcome back to Espresso News, brought to you by Coffee Corner Motorsport, the podcast where we talk about what's been happening in the world of Formula One over the last 7 days. This week, Ford and Red Bull come together to launch their future in Detroit. We've got Cadillac hitting the track for the very first time as a Cadillac team enters Formula One. That's pretty exciting. They completed the shakedown at Silverstone. And then finally, to finish off the show, we've got Ferrari confirming a race engineer change for Lewis Hamilton ahead of the 2026 season. So if all of that takes your fancy, 30 minutes non-stop Formula One news coming your way. Let's kick off with Red Bull. So we, of course, saw the start of Red Bull season. We saw that livery launch, and it was a fully fledged Red Bull and Ford launch. This was the first time the two of them had launched officially together. We had that press conference, I want to say 2023 in New York, with Christian Horner stood there announcing that Ford were coming back. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, this was a Ford racing launch, which Red Bull and Visa Cash App Racing Bulls were a part of. It was held in Detroit, and it was obviously held in Michigan Central Station. Now, this was a big event for Ford. It was mainly to do with Ford racing. If you look at all of the marketing, all of the sort of media that went with it, this was a Ford event which they unleashed the liveries onto the roads. Talk about liveries, what do you think of it? I mean, Red Bull had some gloss. We'll come on to that one. A bit of a different colour scheme. Visa Cash App, pretty much the same, if I'm honest. But yeah, this was the first time, of course, that Red Bull are going to be a fully fledged works team in the world of Formula One. Now, who was there? Pretty much everybody to do with Red Bull leadership. We had Laurent Mekies, we had Peter Bear, we had, of course, Oliver Mitchalf, we had everyone who was anybody at Red Bull, including Red Bull Powertrains. We saw Callum doing a great demonstration with, of course, the Apple VR on the stage as well, so utilising some new technology. Obviously, Apple being new in Formula One, especially in America for the 2020-26 season, that was quite relevant as well. And, of course, we had everyone from Ford. I found the thing about Ford quite interesting, that Ford kind of, jumped in with we're going to win everything. Laurent Mekies and Red Bull were a bit more cautious with their optimism, going, oh, hold on a sec. We've got a lot to learn. We're a new engine manufacturer. We're just coming on board. Let's not kind of count our chickens before they've hatched, whereas Ford, we're going to win it all. That's it. No one else needs to bother racing. Typical sort of, marketing bravado that is, of course. We know they've got a lot to learn. And we obviously had the drivers there, Max Verstappen, Isaac Hadjar for Red Bull, and, of course, Liam Lawson and Arvid Lindblad, who is the rookie on the grid, making up the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls lineup. So the big question, why Detroit? Well, it was obvious, wasn't it? It was always going to be something Ford-related and Ford-led. This is Ford's return moment. They obviously left Formula One back in 2004. They are returning as a strategic technical partner, not a standalone engine supplier. We must remember that one, because amongst all the bravado and all of the press and all of the media, yes, this was Michigan Central Station. Yes, this was them, positioning themselves in the American market as Ford are coming back to Formula One. However, remember, this is a Red Bull powertrain engine with Ford support. Red Bull will be entering 2026 as a fully fledged works team for the first time in their history. Now, just take a moment to think about that. We've got an energy drink who was laughed at when they come on the Formula One grid. Wasn't taken seriously by all accounts and purposes. Was seen very much as a sort of, playboy marketing team in Formula One. Have been openly about why they entered Formula One, which was to get their name out there and to sort of build it up. And here they are going toe to toe as a chassis and power unit under one organisation. No customer engine supply, no constraints. This is one Red Bull designed power unit architecture. Now, of course, they will be supplying their other team, which is Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one. I mean, we saw some bits about the engine. Ben Hodgson was talking, quite eloquently about what's gone into the engine, the journey of Red Bull powertrains, how we've got to this point, what that looks like. We saw that model that was on the stage, like I said, with Callum in the VR headsets. Now, I don't believe that's a finished engine project at all. I don't think Ford or Red Bull will put that out there. But it gives you a good idea of the sort of complexity of integrating the new systems in. We've obviously got a full reset with both the engine and the aerodynamics. Ford allowing Red Bull to breathe, basically. So what's happening is Red Bull powertrains are new. They got a lot of people from both the Honda project, and they've gone off to get a lot of people from like Mercedes, the works manufacturers. They've managed to get them across. But what Ford's enabled them to do is speed up that process in the sense of giving them expertise from the Ford racing arm of Ford. So where they've struggled with either personnel, they've been able to tap into the Ford network to bring them across temporarily, whilst they recruit other people, get them up to speed. They've also been able to look at processes in terms of manufacturing, what Ford Racing do, is there anything that they can add to it? So yes, Ford are supplying the electrical components, like I said at the start of the podcast, but they're also supplying a lot more in terms of the technical guidance and also the support and helping. So it will be interesting to see what they've done. They've been quite open about sleepless nights in the run-up to, obviously, the first Grand Prix in Melbourne in Australia. They've been open about what that looks like, and they've got a lot to learn. They've obviously got 2 teams on track. That's going to help them in terms of getting data and getting feedback. They can, of course, just tap into the Visa Cadillac Racing Bull feedback. That's going to help them as they develop that power unit. They haven't confirmed whether or not they got that compression ratio sort of trick that's being muted in the press, which we know that Mercedes being talked about. Red Bull were very obvious to kind of avoid answering that question publicly. They didn't say yes or no, if I'm honest. When I listened to what Ben was saying about what they've done with the engine, he did talk about Mercedes kind of building up their own engine support and actually saying that this narrative that Mercedes have got the best engine might have actually come from Mercedes themselves whilst they were in the hunt to try and sort out driver contracts, whilst they were, in the pursuit of Max, trying to obviously see what the future looks like. They've now gone with Kim and George for 2026, but he suggested it might have been a narrative that's been painted to make them look better than what they actually are. He should know he's worked for them for like 20 years, I believe it was, before joining Red Bull Powertrains. So there's a bit of, I suppose a bit of banter is probably the best way to describe it. He's going to be looking to put one over, obviously, on Mercedes as well. It's all talk until we get to Australia. Whether or not they've got it right, both Mercedes and Red Bull, remains to be seen. But, ultimately, Red Bull, as a fully fledged works team, are actually in Formula One, which, like I said, is quite staggering when you think where they were originally when they introduced themselves to the world of Formula One. The engine is called DM01, which is obviously a throwback to Dietrich in terms of the naming of it, and obviously, a nice sort of memento to obviously his legacy since he passed away. I think it's fair to say, like I said, this is a different Red Bull. Like Mecchi in charge, we've got no sort of sign of anything to do with Christian Horner anymore. We know that got changed, obviously, when he got sacked midway through last year, just after Silverstone. But if you look at Red Bull now, the one that hit the stage, it was reserved for Red Bull, more so than previous years. Yes, they had a bit with the plane and the taking off of the livery, but ultimately, this was more of a Ford launch. I think we've got to remember that one, which Red Bull were kind of present at, rather than a Red Bull launch. In terms of the livery, as always, the visuals will give us absolutely nothing in terms of what the car looks like. We've got 2 different cars. We've got the car that was actually unveiled in Detroit, and then we've got the renders from Red Bull, which are a different side of things. Now, the ones that Red Bull gave us seem to be a different design from what was a traditional, that 2026 Formula One car that's been muted about in terms of what the car is going to look like, which is what was at Michigan. So I think that the renders will give us more of a line of thinking. However, we've seen this Red Bull before now. They don't give us information that they need to give us, and they deliberately try and mislead us. So yes, I put a post up saying, look, these are the big differences around the sort of barge boards, around the rear wing, around the front wing. However, don't take any of these as a technical sort of nod to this is what the car's going to look like. It will be different. It'll be different at different stages of testing as well. It will be different what hits the track for the shakedown in Barcelona to what finishes in Bahrain, and then probably different again to what actually hits the track in Australia as well. So take everything, as I keep saying on the podcast, with a pinch of salt. In terms of livery, we got a gloss finish return. Obviously, the FIA have got new mandates over how much the car needs to be livery now. They brought that one in for fear of everyone being overweight and just having carbon black cars. It looks better in gloss. I've always said this. They look much better. It's probably a throwback to the Vettel kind of era, and a throwback to the Red Bull of old coming in. But ultimately, it looks like a Red Bull. So that blue is it looks very different to what we see it in terms of the renders to what the actual studio shots show us. So the studio shots show it as quite a dark blue. It's actually like a jacket sort of print is the best way to describe it on there. It does look good. It looks better. Obviously, Max Verstappen now racing in number 3. He did have 33. He obviously switched to 1 as the world champion. We know, of course, that Lando Norris is switching to 1. Max was expected to go to 33 again, but obviously the FIA changed the rules saying that you can switch numbers from 2026. So he obviously asked to have number 3. It's a number he's always wanted to in terms of having number 3, but he couldn't have it when he joined the sport because obviously Daniel Ricciardo had it. We understand there was a bit of talk between Daniel Ricciardo and the FIA and Max to whether or not he could get it. Either way, he's got it now. It's a new era, a new number for Max. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the Red Bull livery. Are you a fan? I'm certainly a fan of seeing gloss on the car, but yeah, let me know what you're thinking. Is it good? Is it a hit? Is it a miss? And that brings us on to obviously Visa Cash Out Racing Bulls and their role in all of this. Now, they're sometimes forgotten. What I would say is I don't think the livery suited them. I don't think that the livery was designed for them. They did a lot around the creator sort of led marketing that they're doing, and they talked a lot about that side of things. However, it kind of felt like they were invited there and they were there. It felt like, I don't know, it felt like maybe it's time that Visa Cash Out Racing Bulls had their own launch and did their own thing. They're trying to move into a different market away from Red Bull. And for me, I think this showed it. It kind of felt like we had all of this stuff and then we bolted on Visa Cash Out Racing Bulls at the end to just say, here's the car. And I'm not too sure what that looks like going forward. And maybe this was just because it was Ford and it was everybody's together. But I think, yeah, for 2027, Visa Cash Out Racing Bulls probably need to go their own way. In terms of the role they're playing, they've obviously got a much more steadier lineup in the sense of they've got Liam Lawson for the whole season. They had him after a couple of races last year. They've obviously promoted Arvid Lindblad. There's no Helmut Marko. It kind of feels it's got the potential to be a very secure year for Red Bull and for Visa Cash Out with terms to their driver markets. There doesn't look like there's a lot in the pipeline in terms of junior drivers. So maybe that's going to take the pressure off both of them. Maybe actually that's going to help them. But what I will say is you've got, with Visa Cash Out Racing Bulls, the star performer who was Isaac Hazard, obviously, going up to the main team. It's up to Visa Cash Out to actually what is it that they're going to bring to it? And Liam Lawson, can he step up and be the number one driver? Because ultimately, he's not done a full season with Visa Cash Out. So it's a lot to ask for him. So yes, he's not inexperienced in the sense of being a brand new rookie, but actually, big responsibility on his shoulders. Then, of course, they talked a lot about what Ford are doing. So what are Ford doing? So they're the power unit architecture, like I said. So their contribution, as I said earlier, advanced marketing and manufacturing. They've got rapid additive prototyping, high-speed simulation controls, the electrical side of the car, battery systems, thermal management, all of those things. This is not a fully fledged Ford return to Formula One, despite what the marketing might tell you, despite what the socials might tell you. This is firmly a Red Bull Powertrains engine with Ford's help as a technical partner. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on it. What did you think of the launch? Yes, it was live. Yes, it was pre-recorded. Most of the launches are nowadays. It's a shame some things got leaked online. It's kind of annoying when that happens, but it's part and parcel of obviously not being live, and it's one of the risks that you play. For me personally, it's one of those where you look at it and go, actually, is it right? Is it wrong? Me, I just prefer to wait until actually we get the final confirmation to make sure it's fully factual when it goes out. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the livery. Let me know your thoughts on VCOB. Do you think that they should have their own launch, or do you think that actually having them together still fits being owned by the same company? So all of that in mind, that brings us on to Cadillac and Silverstone, because this was very quiet. Now, obviously, in Detroit, just a couple of days before they launched their shakedown livery, which is when they're going to use, they're obviously doing a Super Bowl launch. They are very keen to not be overshadowed by Ford's return. When you look at what happened last week, whilst all eyes were on Detroit, all eyes being on the Ford and the Red Bull launch, behind the scenes at Silverstone, Cadillac had their first ever laps on a track. Now that is absolutely massive. Yes, there was some talk about engine firing up, taking some time. That's what a shakedown is, though. People who have read too much into that one. The whole point of a shakedown is you introduce systems, you integrate them together, and you iron out gremlins in there. Now, bear in mind, this isn't their engine, it's a Ferrari engine. So yes, there may have been problems being reported all over social media that it didn't go quite to plan. That's why we have shakedowns. That's the whole point of them in Formula One. So they end up driving with Sergio Perez at the wheel. You'd have to expect that's because it was late in the day, and rather than split a filming day and lose time later on in the season, they gave it to just Sergio Perez. It's nothing to do with actually who was driving in terms of, where they stand in the team or what's happening with this one. It's purely because actually he was due to be first one out, and it just made sense to get some running of the car out on the track and also get some footage, of course, which they've put all over social media. So for them, it was a really keystone moment for them. Their early mileage was, of course, completed in Ferrari-based TPC cars because they had no chassis or no engine. So that was Sergio Perez last year. He did it all in that blacked out one, you might remember, towards back into last season. But this is all about the people, the process, and the garage operations. But also, this is about accumulation of a dream. I know I've talked about this on one of my videos. But ultimately, you've got to remember, this is everybody's hard work. All of that hard work, sweat, blood, tears, whatever you want to call it. This is accumulation of everything, of all of those dreams to have a Cadillac on a track with its own chassis, its own electrics, its own cooling, its own packaging. Yes, it's got a Ferrari engine, but that's no different to McLaren having a Mercedes engine. I mean, ultimately, they stuck it in under the cover, probably because they wanted one eye to be on, obviously, Detroit and what was going on there. It fitted with that narrative. It wasn't advertised in any way. They run that car. Silverstone is obviously over the road for them. It's absolutely ideal. They can just literally get over there. Film day conditions, it allowed them to get some content out there. They've got quite a bit. And like I said earlier, this is ideal for their first live verification. No performance pressure, no hassle. And also for Ferrari as well, because it enabled Cadillac to fire up the Ferrari engine, which of course, Ferrari get that data from that. They know what's happening. They can see what's happening. So from their point of view, actually having Cadillac fire up that car, and even if they had some issues, that's perfect for them. All eyes are, of course, on Barcelona, January 26th to January 30th. That will be about mileage, about learning. We've got that test livery. They've obviously shaken down the car. That's their next point of the car. That's what they want. The car ran cleanly. We saw it for a few laps. So that means whatever was the bug, they managed to sort it out, because ultimately, if they wouldn't have, they wouldn't have been able to get that car out. So, take everything as it should be. Yes, there may have been problems starting it, which you read on social media, but ultimately, that car started and we got apps around Silverstone ahead of Ferrari, then firing up theirs on their social media. That's important. That means that car's up and running. We've obviously seen the Audi that's been launched later this week. We'll come on to that one afterwards, but that car's been up and running as well. So we've got two of the cars actually doing shakedowns. There's a few more planned this week. Keep your eyes peeled for that one. There's a sneaky room there. Alpine are about to do a launch as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that one in terms of a shakedown. They've got launched towards the end of the week. Valtteri Bottas was obviously there. Joe was there. Pretty much everybody was there if you look at all the pictures on social media. And you don't blame them. Like I say, this is accumulation of their hard work. This is what they've been waiting for. Cadillac in Formula One. And you can't not get excited about it, can you? I mean, I'm a fan first and foremost. To see a brand new team in Formula One, it's the same as when Haas joined, probably to a bigger extent, because this is a big car manufacturer rather than an American brand coming in. But this is massive for Formula One. This is Cadillac in Formula One. You've got to get excited about this. Do you know what? Part of me loves this underdog story. Part of me loves the fact that they've come into Formula One. Some people are ready to write them off. Some people actually just want to get behind them and see them doing, black car, no branding, no reveal, no fanfare, just running it around Silverstone. That's what we want to see from a team. And I'm excited to see what they can do. I want to see what's going to happen. Yes, we know there's all the razzmatazz with their commercial livery being reserved for the Super Bowl. Why wouldn't you reserve that? Why wouldn't you do that? They want a big explosion onto the world of Formula One. The Super Bowl in America is the biggest explosion you could have. So I'm looking forward to see what they got. Some of their merch was really good. We saw the sort of jackets, the hats. I can't wait to get Alderson Cadillac merch. So if there is anyone from Cadillac watching, send some my way, please, because I really can't wait. That merch looks absolutely great. Cadillac, Ferrari, brings us nicely, doesn't it, to Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari and his race engineers. Ferrari confirmed what many of us have probably wanted, is the best way to describe it on social media, and that's that Lewis Hamilton will have a new race engineer for 2026. Now, Riccardo Adami, I think that's how you pronounce it, apologies if it's not, he's going to move into the Ferrari Driver Academy and TPC leadership. He's obviously been Lewis for one season. They haven't announced a replacement just yet. There was clearly some issues between Riccardo and Lewis last year. Lewis obviously joined in 2025. He's had that hugely successful partnership with Bono. Bono isn't just a race engineer. Bono is one of Lewis's closest friends. Now, there's no talk or no suggestion that Bono is going to follow him to Ferrari. And there's a few reasons behind this. You've got their personal life, which I've said this before on the podcast many times. If you're a driver relocating to a team, it's not actually that much of a problem, because ultimately you fly in to wherever that factory is. Now, whether you go one way and go to Italy or whether you go another way and go to the UK, that's not really that much here or there. The engineers are very different. The factory is their hub. It's their place to work. To move to somewhere like Ferrari, you have to uproot your whole family and go to Italy. And that's something that Bono just doesn't look like he wants to do for whatever reason. You kind of got to respect that. Also, you got to look at garden leave. Now, most race engineers would have minimum 6 months garden leave, especially with the new cycle of regulations. Someone like Bono and someone like GP, as I said in my video, because they go, they hold roles, not just engineering, but like trackside engineering, so higher up roles. They're going to have 12 months of garden leave. So realistically, there is no chance of any sort of established Formula One mechanic leaving and taking up a role at least before the summer, which obviously Ferrari can't wait that long. Now, this could just be, of course, a new system, a new language, a new process, the immediate expectations of trying to hit off with Lewis Hamilton. The friction was there, like I said. Lewis is very emotional. Lewis is someone who wears his heart on his sleeves, who will say what he thinks, and he will be out there. Now, I'm not too sure. I've read some things on, the performance of race engineer, but they matter because they are the drivers' interface of the team. They are the drivers' go-to. They're in charge of strategy calls. They're in charge of all the tyre decisions. They are the communicator between the pit wall and the driver and vice versa. They are the ones who tell them everything. Now, if you haven't got that trust under pressure, that relationship is doomed to fail from the off. Now, Ferrari obviously want to respect the culture. They want to make sure that it's someone from within the team. They like to do that. That's what Ferrari do. That's the Ferrari way. They prefer internal rather than external. They want to recycle that internal experience. They want to give people the opportunity. But it was clear that that relationship was stranded and it was flawed and it needed a change. Now, 2026, with the new regulations, with a new car philosophy, with everything we've got around engine saving, battery modes, all of these things, it was clear that Lewis and his race engineer were going to struggle. So it's better to do it now before the season starts than do it at a midway point in the season. What does that actually mean in terms of Lewis and in terms of the race engineer? We could read too much into it, but ultimately, they need to give Lewis the best opportunity that he can to get the most out of the car. And if a change of race engineer is what he's looking for, then you kind of got to respect that and go with it, because ultimately he's telling you there's a problem with things. It's not the performance of the engineer who could be at fault here. People talk about this like it's Ricciardo's fault. It may not be. It might just be a personality clash. We've all worked with people where actually we don't get on with people. It's the same as what this is potentially, where people can be good at a job, but we don't get on with them. We don't gel with them. These two need to be close. They need to be two people who are actually have got each other's back, can get on with each other, can get the best out of each other. And Lewis clearly wasn't get that with his engineer. So it makes sense to make the change now. It makes sense to bring somebody else in. It makes sense to do it before the season starts. And it also makes sense to keep that expertise and that experience and keep it within the Ferrari network, because why would you want to lose that? In terms of, like I say, someone coming in, I mostly think it will come from an internal recruitment, a promotion. There's some talk of a performance engineer who's come with Lewis from Mercedes to Ferrari, either just before or around the same time. That's looking like it's a likely thing. That would make sense of someone who's got a relationship with Lewis. He'd been with Mercedes since I think it was 2020, 2021, something like that beforehand. So he knows Lewis well. That makes sense to bring someone in who Lewis knows, who Lewis potentially has a rapport with, and who Lewis trusts, because that's really key in this relationship. But it'd be interesting to see who they bring into it, and also just what does it do for Ferrari in terms of shaking things up. But let me know your thoughts on this one. Looking on social media, though, it looks like it's a welcome move by fans, that's for sure. So that's it for the podcast this week. We've got Red Bull and Ford now officially launched, of course, and Visa Cash Out with their livery, Cadillac proving their car runs, and of course Ferrari reshaping Lewis Hamilton's side of the garage and that decision over who becomes his race engineer for 2026. Keep your eyes on the socials and of course on www.coffeecornermotorsport.com, where I'll be giving you all the latest on the road of Formula One. Car launches are coming fast. We've got a few more planned this week, and of course we are then heading for a shakedown in Barcelona as well. So yeah, quick message from me. If you haven't already, don't forget, follow Espresso News wherever you get your podcasts from, and that way you'll be kept up to date with all of the coverage on Coffee Corner Motorsport. Catch you soon. Have a great week.